Welcome to the MLC Presents, a roundtable discussion on Asians and Pacific Islanders in the music industry. My name is Dave Bogan. I'm the head of third-party partnerships here at the MLC. This initiative, this conversation wraps up a series of conversations we've had this year through the cultural partnerships lens at the MLC. Earlier this year, we had a conversation around Black music creators. Mid-year, we had a conversation around Latin music creators, and again, later in the year. And we also had a panel on LGBT music creators and music industry professionals. This series gives a platform for music creators and music industry professionals from different historically underrepresented communities to talk about their careers, to talk about the music industry, to talk about trends and challenges and so forth, and to provide insight not only to the MLC, but to the music industry and our audience around these unique perspectives. So I'm super excited to welcome today's moderator, Allyson Toy, who comes to us from Twitch. She is the artist relations manager and the head of the Asian Guild at Twitch. I'm going to go ahead and take off my screen share.
Cool,
All right,
cool.
welcome, Allyson.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Day, and big thanks to the MLC for hosting us in the first place. As Day mentioned, I'm Allyson Toy. I'm based here in the Bay Area. Looking after artist relations for Twitch. My background is in the music industry. I've been here for about 10 years or so, and I've done a lot of work in the East-West crossover space, formerly the Fader, Red Bull, 88 Rising, and originally in booking at CAA and WME. I'm also a co-founder of Lion's Share, which is a creative community and bi-weekly music podcast that features Asian and Asian diaspora artists each week. We're on Spotify, so check us out. Again, today, we're talking about Asians and Pacific Islanders in the music industry, and I've got some fantastic ones joining us. So each of the other speakers, as I call your name, feel free to unmute, turn on your camera, and if you could give our friends in the audience just a quick introduction, your name, where are you based, where you work or what you're up to right now, and then I'll pass it on to the next person. So
right before you get started, I want to give a little notes to the audience. Throughout the conversation, if you have any questions, we do have a Q&A feature. At the bottom of the Zoom window, you'll see a little icon that says Q&A. If you click on that, you'll be able to post your questions. And then at the end of the discussion, we'll have a Q&A that Allyson will moderate and call your questions out and allow speakers to address your questions.
Sweet. I'll also be keeping an eye on the chat. So folks tune in, let us know where you're tuning in from. And we will kick off with our speaker introductions, starting with the one and only Bohan Phoenix.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for having me. My name is Bohan Phoenix. I'm a Chinese American hip hop artist. I'm from Chengdu, but currently I'm based in New York. And what I've been doing, I just wrapped up my first album, so super excited for that and happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Bohan. Next up, Brian Sampson.
Thank you, Toy, and Day and Helena. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this amazing panel with so many talented individuals. I work at Empire, which is a digital distribution and record label. We're based out of San Francisco. However, I'm based in Los Angeles. I oversee radio promotion and lifestyle and street marketing for the company. Been there for 11 years out of the 20 years that I've been in the music industry as a promotion executive.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. Next up, we have Clint.
Hi, my name is Clint. I'm based in LA. I am the label manager and really the co-founder of Acrylic Label. We do instrumental music, anything from lo-fi hip hop to jazz.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us, Clint. Next up is Lonnie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me on this panel, and honored to be here and represent our Asian and Pacific Islanders in the music industry. I manage singer-songwriter Aloe Black and a brand new production trio, Your Other Half. I've been blessed to be in the industry and mentored and experienced with the likes of Damon Wayans and Clarence Clemens from the E Street Band with Bruce Springsteen, and many, many more. So pleased to be here and hope I can share my experience with you all.
Awesome. We are so lucky to have you, Lonnie. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, Peter, if you could please introduce yourself.
Hey, what's good, everybody? I'm Peter. I'm based out of Brooklyn, New York. I have bounced around in the music industry. I've done everything from PR to the label side. Currently, I'm working at Park Avenue Artists, and I'm hoping to start my own label very shortly, Siduri. And yeah, very excited as well to be on this panel with a host of my talented peers. And thank you very much to the Mechanical Licensing Collective and Day and Helena for putting this together.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter. I see folks in the chat tuned in from LA, New York, DC. So we're spanning the whole states right now, which is really awesome. 2 more intros before we get started into the questions. Next up is Rosalind.
Oh, you can hear me, but can't see me. Oh, there.
You're good.
Of course, I have the technical difficulties. Thank you so much, MLC, for having us, Day and Allison. Always a blessing to be here with all of these great folks. I have 2 chapters of my career. My first half was really spent in the mainstream music industry, helping launch companies like MySpace.com and MySpace Music. But my life changed when I went to the Philippines for the first time with Apple, the Black Eyed Peas, and a trip sponsored by the tourism board. And since then, I've really dedicated my life to helping internationalize and market artists, specifically of Filipino or API descent, as well as our talent and our content, especially on our platform called Mix. Mix is the biggest multimedia platform for Filipinos across the world, exposing themselves to an international audience through TV, radio, as well as events throughout the world.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rosalind. And last but not least, we have Twee.
Hi, everyone. Shout out to Allison and shout out to the MLC for hosting this panel. I'm honestly so honored to be here answering your guys' questions or just having a space in this conversation. I will do my very best to answer it to the best of my knowledge, but really just speaking from my own experiences. I was originally living in the Bay Area working in the medical field before I quit my job 3 years ago and moved out to Los Angeles to be a full-time musician. And I just released my first debut project. So that's what I've been currently working on. But yeah, thank you so much for having me here, you guys. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, y'all better check out that project because it is fire. So remember, guys, Q&A in the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom. If you have questions for me, if you have questions for any of our individual speakers or everybody generally, you feel free to pop them in there and stick around till the end because that is when we will be answering them.
With that, I'm going to hop off. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over the reins to Allison. Thank you all of our speakers for joining us, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
For sure, for sure. Thank you, Day. Well, cool. So we're going to get started with some of the questions that I have prepared. Starting with, what is your heritage and how has your heritage shaped the person you are today, right? So we have quite a few speakers here. I'm just gonna call on some people, but if there are others who have, others of the speakers who feel strongly about this, you can also use the raise hand feature, which is in the bottom right of your Zoom. So I'm gonna start this one off actually with Lonnie, if that's all right.
Sure, throw me in there.
Perfect. So yeah, the question is, what is your heritage and how has it shaped the person you are today? Feel free to talk about that personally, professionally, or all of the above.
Okay, so I am absolutely mixed. I am born in Fiji, the Fiji Islands, but my background is Filipino, Samoan, Indian, and Scottish. So I lived my first 10 years of my life in Fiji, moved to the Philippines and lived in the Philippines for 3 years. From there, moved to Australia and most of my teen life in Australia and my late 30s on here in the US. So for me, my background is so worldly. My music influence comes from island music to Indian music to, when I lived in the Philippines, it's such a musical culture over there where every single household has karaoke and sings, right? So that's really been a part of, I think, help influencing me with music and why I wanted to be in the industry. It's also kept me humble in many, many ways. I've lived a very simple life in Fiji and a beautiful life. And then I've also experienced the extreme glam of the music industry. And I really feel like because I've been able to live my life, it keeps me humble. It reminds me that the simple life is just as wonderful, if not sometimes better. And it gives me the peace that we sometimes need to escape to when we work in such an intense industry as well. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Lonnie. Same question. I'm curious to know what you think about this one, Twee. What is your heritage? How has it shaped the person you are today?
Thank you, Allison. And Lonnie, I loved your answer. I think having a good head on your shoulders keeps you definitely humble, especially in this crazy industry that we're in. For me, I am 100% Vietnamese. And, growing up, karaoke was always a huge thing in my family too. I mean, it was like at every family event, even if there wasn't an event, my parents would always just put it on as a pastime activity. But music, it wasn't something that like that I knew how to even navigate. It wasn't, I didn't have anybody looking up to that can kind of help me navigate this music industry. But what my heritage has given to me and my culture has given to me, or my parents have kind of passed on to me to help me navigate this crazy industry, is just their like resilience and their resourcefulness, especially being immigrants. I think that they have this natural survival instinct that was just clearly passed on to me, and especially trying to figure things out every single day. I think the resourcefulness and the resiliency has really helped me just go with my gut and figure things out that way. And so I'm really grateful for those traits that my parents passed on to me, even though they didn't pass on, any knowledge about how to navigate the industry. I think that those two characteristics have really helped me to just keep going and never give up. And even if I can't figure out something, I'm gonna figure it out sooner or later. I'll figure out something. And like, it's kind of just that survival instinct, I guess, that I'm really grateful for.
Amazing. No, for sure. And I think that that's a perspective that a lot of Asian Americans and a lot of immigrants, whether of Asian descent or otherwise, feel, right? That is, that resiliency, that resourcefulness, that's what comes from being underrepresented in some ways, right? So, that is a nice kind of transition to our next question, which is just how has heritage shaped the relationship between music and identity, right? And I'm super excited for this one to actually hear from Bohan, because I know you have talked about this a lot in your music and whatnot. So yeah, if you could tell us how your heritage shapes your music and the relationship that it has to identity, that'd be awesome.
Thanks, Allison. So yeah, I was born in China. I was born in Hubei, and I moved to the States when I was 11 to Boston to live with my mom. And so the first part of my life, I actually kind of like what Lonnie said, I shared the same bed with my grandparents for 11 years. And then I moved to Boston and I go to New York. So, I became really close to music in a gospel choir in high school. And when I got to New York and I started, writing and really pursuing my career, it was really confusing what it is that I wanted to do, because all the people that I grew up listening to were just really impressive, punchlines and all that. And I was like, man, there's no way I'm gonna have more impressive punchlines than Lil Wayne or M, So I was like, what is it that makes sense for me? And that's kind of when I tapped back into, okay, my heritage. And as a storyteller, that's when things started making sense for me personally. It's when I started telling my story. And then I find that, even though I'm Chinese American, through telling my story, my struggles, my ups and downs, people who are not the same heritage as me or same background as me, ironically started to find similarities and relate to it. And that's when my world just opened up. So yeah, heritage has really been my heritage has been, you know, kind of the key ingredients that was missing in the early half of my life. Yeah.
Amazing. And to further to that question, how exactly are you integrating your heritage into your music and your work?
Yeah, so I definitely you know, play around with a lot of different Eastern instruments in the instrumentals, you know, bringing live instruments on stage from the East, and also just incorporating Chinese Mandarin into my lyrics. I remember like it's like years ago, I did this open mic at New Eureka in Lower East Side. And it was like a lot of Chinese in my verses, and I came off stage and the Spanish homie said, "Oh, what was that? That was dope." And I was trying to explain to him what I said in the lyrics. He was like, "Oh no, I don't need to even know what you said. Like, it was just dope, you know, just hearing it in a different language." And so, yeah, it just gave me a lot of confidence to kind of just be an individual. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the spirit of hip hop, you know, to me.
Truly. Yeah, no, that authenticity is super important. And it's cool to see somebody from a different cultural background who connects with that too, right? So I want to ask the same question of somebody who is not necessarily an artist. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Peter, put you on the spot really quick to ask, how has your heritage shaped the relationship that you have between music and identity?
Yeah, of course. I really very much resonate with what you're saying, Bohan, about being able to find that commonality and connect with a story that might not be your own. And I'd love to actually hear a little bit more about, you know, how you actually fell into hip hop in the first place. But I grew up on the East Coast. I'm first generation. And I think if anyone here is from the East Coast, my childhood was probably very similar to yours. And I think music for me was the first outlet that I could really find myself in. And for me, when I think to my defining years, like early adolescence, those experiences are really inextricable with finding and discovering music. I really think that, especially at the time, there was a golden age for hip hop, with Chance and Odd Future and Mac Miller and Kendrick and Kanye, all releasing like such great music at that time. And I think I really fell into it because hip hop for me has always been a voice for the outsiders. And I think I found some solace and some comfort in those perspectives. And even though those stories I couldn't necessarily relate with, I could certainly empathize with feeling like I was on the outside. And so for me, hip hop was my first love and my gateway into the music industry. And certainly at that age, I didn't realize maybe just how profound that impact would be, but it would eventually, you know, spur me on to doing this as a job. So hugely monumental. Yeah, and so I think just finding those commonalities and feeling like I was able to have a gateway into something that was bigger than myself and could find me, this little Asian kid surrounded by white people growing up in this little suburban town, that really was everything. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, everyone. Yeah, it's cool to see that like within the Asian and Pacific Islander diaspora, our experiences really differ quite a lot, right? You know, Asian and Pacific Islander, that includes like 50 some odd countries. We've all come to where we are through different ways and means and everything, yet there are still sometimes these sort of universal moments that kind of tie us together. And it's cool that for this group, at least, that one is music, right? And so, you know, one thing that I would love to ask, and I'd love to hear from someone who hasn't spoken just yet, ideally too. You know, in May, we celebrate Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month here in the US, right? You know, what is the significance of that to you? Why is it important that we celebrate it? So I am actually going to pass it to Rosalind because I know that you have thoughts about this particularly, but anybody else, do feel free to jump in straight after her.
Sure. So I think when anytime there's a holiday or a name of an event or a month like AAPI month or Filipino American History Month, there's an opportunity, not just within our community, but now the major companies are paying attention. So Spotify, Amazon, and the NBA are now creating playlists. They're creating showcases. They're creating heritage nights. I work with the LA Clippers and a couple of NBA teams to produce Chinese Heritage Nights, Korean Heritage Night, etc. So there's those opportunities that might not have been given to our talent and our artists, as well as those times for mainstream exposure. And Spotify even takes the time to create billboards, Amazon as well. On top of that, it's a really good opportunity to lean in on your community. So there's a lot of community organizations throughout the country that produce their own festivals, their own showcases, etc., within those cities during those specific months. So there's an opportunity for media exposure, but there's also a really good opportunity, a paid opportunity for performances as well.
Totally. Yeah. And I think the interest from major corporations who maybe haven't, celebrated the month in the past or don't have like specific, year-long initiatives that target Asian and Pacific Islander audiences, like May is really an interesting time to look at that. If I may, Brian, can I actually put you on the spot with this one, since you worked in the promotions and the marketing side for a long time? I know you also organized a panel discussion around Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in May. And so I'm curious to hear from you. You've been around the game for a minute. Like celebrating this month is something that we can't always take for granted. It hasn't always happened. Like, what is sort of the significance of it for you and maybe for some of the artists that you work with?
It's very significant for me. I really have to thank Rosalind, because whenever we have an opportunity to work together for the amazing activations that she produces, or just having one-on-one conversation, it's amazing to have a counterpart and a friend in the industry that shares the passion, the cultural history, that's dedicated to highlight that history, but also dedicated to help people within our community, and also to be able to highlight Filipino Americans within our industry, or people looking and seeking for an entry point in the industry, because the doors aren't always open for us. And for me, it's a deep passion for myself, because I'm a first generation Filipino American. My mother was born and raised in Hawaii, and my father came from the Philippines. And they created a household for myself of sharing that passion and that cultural experience, because for them, their outlet. My father worked in the agriculture fields in the San Joaquin Valley, and my mother grew up on the sugarcane plantation. So they had a very hard life growing up, but their outlet was always music and music and cooking. So I always remember that the influence for me started off at a very young age. On the weekends, my mother would bake, and during the day, all the family would come over and they would have jam sessions. And our family was very musically inspired with Hawaiian music. And so from there, the history part of that influenced me, because my uncles and my dad created a small quartet of Hawaiian musicians and performed. And then from there, as I got involved more into the community, Stockton being a very diverse melting pot, we hosted, as a young child, I was always part of hosting and curating some of the festivals, the Filipino Barrio Fiesta. And from there, I experienced the live funk and R&B band experience. So that became another fusion. And then also from there, I started DJing and became, just like a promoter at the same time of doing DJ battles, breakdance contests. And so that whole fusion melting pot there, I always like to share that experience, because a lot of us who are Filipino Asian Americans don't have a gateway, a direct gateway to get into the music industry. And when I got into the music industry, when I was in San Francisco, when I graduated from San Francisco State, this is 89, 90, just there was only a couple friends that we can relate to locally on an independent level. And one was Dan the Automator, and then the other was Swaying Tech. And through those two relationships, we kind of really had to figure out our way through the industry. And when I finally got into the industry as an editor at the Gavin Report, I remember counting about how many Filipino and Asian Americans that worked in the industry. There's like about 6 of us that I can count. And that didn't even include on the creator side. So the history of the Asian Pacific Islanders and where we were then and now is amazing, because to be a part of this panel and for everybody to be able to share their experiences and information, it's going to help a future generation. And that's my whole purpose and passion, is to be able to help and give. And it's really what the kind of like the nucleus of what Empire is about, is to help and educate the artist.
Amazing. No, thank you so much for sharing. I wish I could have attended one of your family jam sessions, especially if the food was good. Jeez, thanks for the invite.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the topic of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, right? I think that, you know, what I'm hearing from the group and what I've heard from a lot of artists and other industry folks who are, you know, who identify as Asian American or Asian Pacific Islander, right, is that generally a lot of people feel a lot of positive sentiment towards having these heritage months. The time when it becomes a little bit dicier, so to speak, is when the artists who are supported or the initiatives who are supported are only getting support during that month, right? So there are any people who work in the DEI space or who work in cultural month programming and stuff like that, just a friendly reminder that the support, you know, continuously is as meaningful, if not more, than just in the month of May, which is a great time for us to shine regardless, so we will take it. I have more questions, but as a reminder to the folks who are tuned in, please feel free to give us any of your Q&A in the bottom right-hand corner here of this Zoom. We'll be saving questions towards the end, which will probably be in about like 20 minutes time or so. So moving on to the next one, speaking again of authenticity, right? You know, how do today's emerging AAPI music creators position themselves in the US music market while staying true to their identity and heritage, right? So this is a big question. I feel a lot of you have thoughts on this one. I mean, to put our artists on the spot quickly. I mean, Bohan or Twee, do you guys have thoughts on this one? Twee, I see you nodding. I'm gonna put you in.
I feel like this is, I'm trying to wrap all my thoughts into like, you know, a quick, I guess, statement, but I feel like it's really hard to, because I feel like there's so many factors that go into this question. But just to kind of tell you guys more about like me, growing up, I pushed away my Asianness for a really long time. And it wasn't even until after college that when I moved back home in with my parents, I was almost embarrassed at how much I didn't have pride for my culture. And then I think also seeing my parents get older, it hit me more when I was an adult. And it made me feel saddened by how I was so affected by wanting to fit in and be something that I wasn't. And I'm so grateful now that, you know, moving back home, it allowed me the opportunity to just really appreciate my culture and where I come from. And, you know, in my newest music video for I Hope You See This, it was really important for me to showcase who Twee is as an artist, where she comes from. And that was why it was really important to have my parents in the music video, because I think a lot of people know Twee as, you know, someone who puts out singles here and there, but they don't really know who Twee is and how she was brought up. What is her culture? What is her heritage? And I think as an artist, it's so important, especially when you get to a certain tier, to also recognize that your representation is really important and it inspires a lot of people. And for, you know, a while that didn't really, I didn't grasp that, because I really just feel like I'm being authentic and I'm just being myself and I'm really just making music and I'm doing what I love every single day. But I think that once you get to a certain level, you can't ignore the fact that your presence here in this industry, being a Vietnamese woman, is very powerful. And I think that it inspires a lot of people. And I get a lot of younger generation Vietnamese Americans who reach out to me and just thank me for being an artist or just, putting out music. And it's, to me, I feel like I'm just doing what I love, but it's such an amazing feeling to also be inspiring like others while I'm doing it. So I think for me, it's just kind of that, the mix between just doing what I want and being true to who Twee is, but then also highlighting my culture so that people know that, oh, her music's really dope. And it just so happens to be that she's Vietnamese American, And so I think just trying to stay authentic in that way and not just make it about me being Vietnamese, I guess. So it's kind of, in my everyday thing, sometimes people ask me like, how do you feel about being like a Vietnamese American woman? Like you really are breaking barriers and doing all that. And when I think of it in that sense, I'm like, wow, yeah, you're absolutely right. But in a daily, when I'm just kind of living, I'm just really just being myself. And it's dope that I get to still inspire people just from being authentic and just living my true self. So it's a hard question to answer because I think when we reflect on ourselves, it's a little bit harder to do. But I think above all else, I really just try to be like authentic to who Twee is and just kind of live my true self and my true identity and my best life, I guess.
Absolutely. Simply by existing, by taking your seat at the table, you are inspiring other people to do the same, truly. So it's touching to me to hear that fans have reached out to you to express that, because I think, the reality of it, guys, is that Asian Americans, Asian Pacific Islanders, like we are underrepresented in this game still. And I think having those people that can stand up for the community, whether it's on the industry side or on the artist side, is super, super important. Bohan, if you want to add any thoughts to that, I'd love to hear him. Again, the question was, how do you sort of position yourself in the US while staying true to your identity and heritage?
Yeah, and I just want to supplement what Twee said too. And so like I got into hip hop. Basically, when I got to the States, my mom wanted me to watch TV and cartoons to kind of imitate how people were speaking. And I came across 8 Mile, and 8 Mile got me obsessed with Eminem's story as an outsider. Because at that point, I had never lived with my mom. My stepfather was white. I didn't speak English. I'm just like in the middle of nowhere. And so, but like, even though that I got interested in music and hip hop through Eminem and through like just like, that, even though he was an outsider, he could get camaraderie and like, confidence from this music, but I still didn't feel like it was a place for me. And I just, one day, I don't know how, but I came across Jin's 106 in Park videos, and I started digging into Jin. This is like same time in high school as me in gospel choir. And I'm like, oh, there is a Chinese homie doing this, And so, and this is a real story. Like I wanted to join my gospel choir, but my director was like, you can't really hold a note, but I heard you like to rap. So every time we had a school concert, you wrote a verse about God or whatever, and we'll have the band back you and stuff. And it was seeing Jin, I was like, I'm gonna go and do this on stage, not just kind of like write lyrics in my bedroom. So to Twee's point, it literally is that. I literally saw someone that looked like me doing it, and therefore I was like, oh, I think I can do this, And so I think one of the ways that I position myself, and I see a lot of people, my peers, position themselves, is just telling their story, whether that's by literally telling their experiences, or like Twee said, just by existing and making dope music. Because at the end of the day, representation is nice and stuff, but if the quality of music is there, and then we're here, it's like, oh, and there is, that's when it's like really hidden.
Totally. Thank you so much for sharing. Did anybody else want to hop in on this one? Again, how do AAPI music creators position themselves authentically? I got plenty of other questions, so if there are no takers, that's fine. Going once, going twice. All right, next one. Okay.
Hey, Allyson.
Oh, yes.
I want to share a story, because this is a story that listening to Bohan, it will probably hit home. And we participated with this executive on our previous panel that we were on to us, and his name is Ted Chung. Ted Chung is the CEO of the Kashmir Agency, and also was Snoop's former manager. But that question really hit home because in 1996, I met Ted Chung on the campus of Harvard University. And at that point, I was managing a rap group called Ill and Out Scratch, and we were on tour. And we happened to be on the campus of Harvard University during the summer, and Ted was attending summer school at Harvard University. And it was a show that was taking place on campus, and opening the show was a MC battle. And I walked up during sound check, and I see Ted arguing with the promoter. And I walked up, and I seen the competition going back and forth, and I was like, "What? Let me go check out my Asian brother over there. Let me see what I can, see what's going on." And so Ted was, if those of you who know Ted, he's very super passionate as a creator and as an artist, and as well as an executive. So I walk up and I asked Ted, I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And I seen the promoter. I said, "Everything cool with the show?" And Ted goes, "No, man, he's kind of hating on me. Doesn't want me on this MC battle. And, I'm here for summer school at Harvard, and I registered, a couple of weeks ago, and now he's saying I can't be on the show. There's no room for me." And I asked the promoter, says, "Why won't you let him on the show?" He goes like, we just don't have any room. He's not going to be able to, we just don't have time. And I haven't even heard, his demo. And I says, what does it even matter if he registered on time? I said, "Well, if you're not going to let Ted," and he's going by the name of Slant Eyes, that was his stage name, Slant Eyes. And I said, "If you're not going to let Slant Eyes on the show," I says, "because there's no specific reason, I'm going to withdraw our group from performing at the show. All I'm asking you is to give him an opportunity." He goes like, "No way, no way." He goes, "It's not going to happen." I said, "Well, you know what? Then we won't do the show." And I walked away, and he goes, wait. We'll put Ted on the show. He'll, we don't know what place he's going to be in, 4th, 5th, or 6th. I said, as long as he's on the show, give him an opportunity. So long story short, I see Ted right before showtime. I said, "Hey, Slant Eyes, how did you do, on the MC battle?" He goes, "Man, first of all, thank you so much for helping me." He goes, "You don't even know who I am." I said, "Well, where are you from?" He goes, "I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a Korean student, MC artist that's studying here in Harvard, but I go to Drexel." He goes, "But I just appreciate you because I took 3rd place on the show." And I said, "Well, when you get back to Los Angeles, if there's anything I can help you with, I work in Los Angeles. I'm moving to Los Angeles." I was like, "Let me what I can possibly do." He goes, "Absolutely, I will call you." Two months later, Ted called me, and I hired him as my intern. And fast forward, he's an amazing, successful executive. But that's what giving an opportunity to help empower your next generation of Filipino Asian American artists, to help them open the door. And Ted shares that story with everyone on our initial introduction to the music industry.
Love that. Thank you so much, Brian. You always have the best stories, but really, I think that is so important, right? This idea of solidarity, this idea of helping one another, because because I'm Asian and you're Asian doesn't mean there's not enough room for both of us. Like we are taking our seat at this table, y'all. And so stories like that are so touching. Like when you have the opportunity to extend that help to somebody younger, to somebody, a developing artist, somebody just coming up into the business, like do it. So I want to move on to the next question, which I think this is a good segue for. So obviously, the music industry is one that is ever changing, technology, social media, distribution channels, all that sort of thing, right? Asian API representation has also changed a lot in music and in Hollywood generally, right? Over the last decade, let's say. So I would love to call upon a few other folks, maybe the ones who were a little quieter last time, to share their thoughts on how API representation has changed in the last decade. Starting, if I may, with Lonnie.
Okay, where do I start with this question? How has it evolved or gone backwards? So I feel like my experience in Australia in the mid-90s, I felt like the record labels were giving a lot of our people of color, our Indians and our Islanders, an opportunity to, and they were getting signed in Australia. We had a band called Culture. We then had another group called CDB that were all signed to major labels. Given the exposure, they were put on all our major music award shows. And then I would say a couple of years later, there were no more signings. You know, it went back to a lot of our pop artists, white artists. Now it's beginning to get back in there, and our artists in Australia, Pacific Islanders, and we have, you know, El Fresh Lions out there as an independent artist. We've got Paulini, a Fijian artist that was signed to, I think, Sony. A lot of them are now getting the opportunity again, but it's still a struggle out there to make mainstream media, or, you know, so yeah. And on the other hand, what I noticed last year was TikTok was a great platform that gave some of our islanders like Savage an opportunity to go viral. So on the social media side, I really truly think that that's an avenue that we are getting seen. So Savage, you've got Lin-Manuel Miranda with Moana, who gave a lot of our Pacific Islanders an opportunity, or Pattaya, who won, I think, an Oscar out of that as well. So it's baby steps still, I feel. I think there's still a lot more to be done.
Truly.
APIs, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Lonnie. I would love to hear from Clint. Same question. You know, how do you feel AAPI representation in the music industry has changed over the last decade or so?
I think it's getting better. I mean, I would love to see, you know, the presence of the AAPI community really just transcend beyond what feels to be like edging between boundaries of like tokenism, and really for us, like having a seat at the table. And I remember when a lot of AAPI representation happened to really just be in pockets of different genres, anything from like hip hop to pop music. But I think like one of the more genres that really shaped a lot of the AAPI representation in the music industry, as well as like performers, happened to come from EDM. Like really just a lot of like just the lack of language barrier, pretty much non-existent. Really people really tuning into the music. It's really this phenomena of like a lot of people not having like any sort of identity. So it's just like looking at raves, looking at different elements of electronic culture, really some of them, the mantras and the motifs, looking into this idea of like belonging into a community when we essentially felt estranged by either community. I think really helped people gain their really their stars and stripes, really getting into something that felt pretty amorphous back then. And we have a lot of like Asian and Pacific Islander music creators that are really like strong in that sort of electronic and EDM world. And I think like, you know, especially with different types of labels and different types of musicians, I really like what's coming out of like indie rock, listening to artists like Japanese Breakfast, Jaguar Jones, Audrey Nunes, like a really great artist I love. And yeah, I just think it's like it's diverse, and people are just in the guise of representation, like even just going beyond identity politics and just saying, well, it's like I'm not just, it's like I am my heritage, but it's just like I'm also a musician. It's just like I'm equal on the playing field, just like anybody else.
Totally. Peter, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one too. You know, how has representation for AAPI in the music industry changed in the last little while?
Yeah, I think everyone who spoke before me just pretty much hit it on the head. And I think the really the main theme is just with the advent of the internet and social media, with everything being so democratized, I think a lot of artists are now able to find a devoted fan base and maybe, you know, not be a Justin Bieber and Adele, but have a very strong career, just serving their own pockets. And I think that's been really terrific. And just seeing, as Bohan again was saying, like I grew up seeing Jin and idolizing like Jay Park and Dumbfounded, and just seeing the whole array of faces that kids nowadays can look up to. It's definitely is great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you raise a really good point, and some of the other folks here touched on it too, about how social media is kind of democratizing artist discovery in many ways, right? I think traditionally the industry used to be such that, you had to have a super high power manager, you needed the major label deal and a radio promoter to get your stuff heard, right? And I think social changes that significantly, where artists can speak directly to their audiences. They can discover people who, people can discover them if they listen to similar artists and things and whatnot. And so I think that has really helped to level the playing field in many ways, and is a big part of that growing sort of inclusion of AAPI in music. So we got a little over 10 minutes left. So lovely audience, your Q&A still welcome using the feature in the bottom right-hand corner. I am going, we got a question from the audience. Hi, Ray Carver. Thank you for this one. I'm actually going to chuck this one in here now. And whoever wants to answer this, feel free to just come off mute and go for it. But Ray Carver is asking, what are some things about the music industry that you know now, but wish you knew when starting out? That's a good one. Any takers?
I can speak on something specific that we deal with the AAPI community. It's kind of a taboo subject, but I wish I knew, and I didn't learn it until I went to the Philippines. And I don't know if there's a lot of other countries that go with this, but skin bleaching is really popular, and we're growing up with a lot of colorism in the Philippines, and a lot of the celebrities on TV or the artists that are signed are specifically of European features or of our lighter skin. I wish that I knew that early on. Now I'm really an advocate, and there's a lot of really great talent like her, Sweetie, Guapjet 4000, Apple that are biracial, that have been really be able to grow on an international scale, that have been able to prove that you don't need to change your skin tone, to be accepted. You don't have to have European features. So I wish I knew that growing up, because I would be more of an advocate for those artists to speak up and to get signed and for those opportunities. But now that I know, we're definitely bringing awareness to it, and we're talking about it, even though it's uncomfortable, even inside the household. Our parents tell us not to go outside, to be in the sun, to get too dark. No, but we gotta love our skin tone. So that's something I wish I knew growing up, but I'm glad I know now.
Absolutely. And it's cool to see, I think, younger generations embracing that identity and the features that come from it more too, right? So I see two other hands here. I'm going to kick it over to Brian and then to Clint for this one. Again, the question was, what do you wish you knew about the industry when you were starting out?
I wish I knew that I belonged in the room. I got my start in '92, so we had zero social media opportunities and access to be able to network. You really only network through maybe a physical introduction, or if somebody had kind of like introduced you or connected you with somebody, of your background, Asian Pacific Islander background. And I think I always had to kind of play my role as either as a Black music executive, as an African American, which I had no problem, because I grew up with a lot of Latinos and African Americans in Stockton, but it was never like an identity where I said, well, I'm a Filipino American executive. And I didn't feel like I was ever really embraced or invited. And I think the only thing that really opened the door for me was hip hop. And Allyson mentioned something earlier in the chat, is the fact that the experience of being a Filipino DJ, specifically the Bay Area, and growing up with the DJ Cuberts of the world, Shortcuts, Brett Maddox, the Beat Junkies, that platform and experience right there really kind of like give us the stamp of approval and the voice to speak out. And understand that I was in the music industry at the time, but the DJ culture was what really kind of like really inspired my passion.
Love that. Something that we share in common. I started DJing because I saw Shortcut, because I saw Qbert doing it. And I was like, whoa, Asians can be cool. This is how you do it. Like, that's literally what, you know, that was literally all of the permission that I needed to pursue what I wanted to do. So, you know, Brian, when you say, I wish I knew I belonged in the room, like that was a bar. Thank you. Same question, gonna kick it over to Clint. What do you wish you knew about the industry when you started out?
That you don't need to go to a university that has a $200,000 degree to succeed in the music industry. But I mean, really, it's like just start doing. It's like a lot of like the music industry. It seems very daunting, but I had to learn the hard way that it is so important to delegate trust and to push this like team dynamic to people who really care. Like passion goes a long way in this industry. And I know that like, it's like, even if you have like this ounce of belief that you can do everything yourself, like my motto has been, if there was somebody I know that can do it a lot better than I can, then I want to delegate trust. Like it used to be that like I like had this like hardened like early 20s New Yorker status that I just wanted to like kind of hustle and grind and do everything. And you know, some of it's beginner's luck, but I think it's really about delegating trust. I will say another thing that I found to be very useful is never show people your hand, but I think you want to show people what you're working on by building in public. It's better to build in public than to build in private, in my opinion.
Got it, for sure. Let's see. I have another question in our Q&A. So this is up for grabs for anybody who wants to jump on it. But the question, again, from Ray, thank you for the question, Ray, says, it's very inspiring to see AAPI creatives, and thank you for this opportunity. What advice would you give to AAPI bedroom artists or producers in the suburbs with little connections to the music industry, right? So no manager, no agent, no label. What is the most effective way to cut through the oversaturation in music today? This is a tough one, but Twee, go for it.
So I've actually been making music for about 7 years, and I didn't even get a manager until less than a year ago. So I think that what's most important is building a foundation to where if you lose everything, you don't have a manager, you don't have a team behind you, you don't have the fans supporting you anymore, you have a foundation that you can fall back on. And honestly, that just comes with time, and it doesn't happen overnight at all. And you know, I'm so grateful for my team right now because I'm able to look back at where I started and really just appreciate the grind from the ground up. I think that there's really no, you know, one journey for every artist. We all have different journeys, and I can sit here and give you my advice, or even, you know, sit here for hours and talk about everything that I did leading up to where I'm at right now. But what worked for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. But I think one thing is just leaning into the fear. When something scares you, I think that's even more reason to do it, and you come out on the other side a lot stronger. And even if you fail, it's not really a failure. You know, you're just kind of failing forward. And I think just try everything, put yourself out there. I think right now, like Lonnie mentioned, TikTok is just incredible. You know, I've seen so much success from it, especially during the pandemic, where, you know, like Allyson said, it gave everybody kind of like this level playing field. And I think use these free social media platforms to your advantage, and don't be afraid to put yourself out there, and nobody's going to motivate you more than you're going to motivate yourself. So I think just actively working on your craft every single day, eventually it's going to add up to where you're going to see the fruits of your labor. You're going to look back and be like, oh my God, I don't know how I got here. But if you really were to look back, you can see all the hard work add up. So just keep putting your best foot forward, and you know, either whether that's writing every single day or, you know, writing down your goals and how you're going to get there. I think just these little things you do every day really truly add up, and don't get discouraged when you don't see, you know, the growth that you want or the success, you know what I mean, like instantly. You know, especially for me and as an artist, I'm sure Bohan or all of you guys can relate to this. The feeling of like having highs and lows through your career is very, very prevalent. And I think I probably experience, you know, highs and lows throughout the day sometimes, you know, and there's, you know, people looking outside in can probably look at me and say, wow, she's really doing it and all of this. But, you know, I have my days where I feel like I don't want to do this anymore, you know, like I want to quit, and it gets really exhausting and it gets really hard. But I think just constantly working even through that feeling makes you just a stronger artist or stronger musician in the long run. And it's really just about the long haul. Like,
Totally.
who can stick it out the longest, you know? And I've definitely seen that over the years where people I look to stopped making music, you know? And it's just about constantly working every single day, even when you don't want to. But, you know, I do want to mention mental health is very important too. Take the time, you know what I mean, to yourself where you don't do anything music related or anything towards your career, because as hard as you work, you should also work really like even harder on your mental health, because you don't want to burn out. So hopefully that helped in a sense. There's really no specifics. I mean, there's really no person that's gonna make your career pop off. You're gonna be the one to do it for yourself. So just bet on yourself and keep working even when you don't see the wins, you know, instantly.
Amazing. Thank you, Toy. Yes, hard work, time, hustle, dedication, right? So guys, we have just one final minute. And so the way I'm going to close this out is we'll hear from each one of our speakers one last time. If you guys could just say, you know, one piece of advice to artists or to industry people getting started, or the one thing that you want people to take away from this conversation. Twee, I feel like you just gave us a couple. So thank you for kicking us off. And I actually saw Clint's hand raised during that last bit. So Clint, do you want to go next?
My advice to AAPI artists and writers: literally just work with your friends. I work in like Latin music, and I've seen like a lot of talented Latin music creatives do a lot with a lot less. And I mean, the biggest thing that really comes out of a lot of their hard work is really, and this can translate to our Asian artists and writers, is really just like, it's like build a network with your close friends, whether it's shooting a DIY music video, or it's really like, you know, even having your cousin help like kind of handle social media, and just, it's kind of like all across the board, really get the people you love involved with, really just get people who really are passionate about your project in.
Amazing. Thank you, Clint. Same question, last bit of advice or one thing you want people to take away from this conversation. I'm going to give it to Bohan.
This advice is going to kind of sound a little similar to Twee's, but yeah, just, you know, I used to think that, you know, there's that belief that, oh, if you're an artist, like you can be lazy, just like whatever, whenever inspiration comes, you just like, you don't have to take care of your health. You don't need to, you know, eat whatever, like, and this is not true. So like, you know, one advice is definitely just take care of yourself. You have to be, you know, your best. And like, there's a lot of up and downs, and you have to be at your best to like, just handle it all and push through.
Absolutely. Brian, I mean, you've given us a lot of gems today, but any last bits of advice or things you want folks to take away from the talk today?
Yes, first of all, thank you again, Day and Helena, for inviting all of us, and Toy, thank you for curating the panel. I'm humbled to be part of this, to be on this panel with all the speakers. I think the most important advice I could share is just from personal experience. And like I said before, I never felt like I belonged in the room. So everywhere I have the opportunity, whether it's in the music industry or whether it's community or just with your family and friends, you know, speak your voice with passion. Feel like you belong in that room. and always make sure that you have the opportunity, whether it's your resources or it's your network of resources, to be able to open the door for that next person, whether it's in business or whether it's in just in the community or within your family and friends. Open the door for the next person, especially for music. I think Clint and Bohan's really hit the point. They really maybe have a role model to open that door. So if you get opportunity, always understand, hand the baton off, because it's about the youth and technology.
100%. That's right. Take your seat at the table and pull up one for the next guy. Thank you, Brian. We'll go to Peter, then Lonnie, then Rosalind. So Peter, same question. What do you want folks to take away from today's discussion?
Totally. Yeah, I think the one piece of advice I'd give to any API creatives, or if you are planning to work on the industry side, is get into it because you have a genuine passion for it. I think that is something we've all heard before, but I think it's especially true for a creative endeavor. You really need to have no ulterior motives and work every day because you genuinely want it. Because it's difficult, and I think everyone here can attest to the many struggles they face. And yeah, just be prepared for that. Know what you're getting yourself into, but work every day to make it happen, and it will.
For sure. Thank you, Peter. Lonnie, same question. What do you want folks to take away from today's chat?
Well, firstly, I think if anyone's, I don't know how the audience feels, but I've took notes because I've received so many gems from everyone on this panel. So thank you. Brian mentioned not feeling like he belonged in the room. And to be honest, I think that was my struggle here in the US, was I felt everyone was so boxed. Every nationality or ethnicity, it was like so boxed here in the US, whereas in Australia, I felt so welcome no matter what room it was I stepped in. I could do it. I could succeed, So that, hearing that reminded me of that. And then something that Twee said that was so significant, she said, lean into the fear. And that's not just as an artist, that's as a manager as well. We have those struggles too, where it's like, oh my God, should I, can I? So I really appreciated hearing that. And also you saying for artists to bet on yourself, 100%. If you believe in your craft, bet on yourself. I think it was Clint that mentioned that you don't have to go to university to succeed. That's so true, because I quit high school at the age of 17 and just got into the workforce and said, no matter what, I'm going to do everything and anything I have to do to be able to do what I love to do. That being said, do I want to go back to school now? Yes, I'd like to go and do law school on music. And lastly, Roz, thank you for saying that the color of our skin, no matter what race, ethnicity you are, we are all accepted, and music allows us as well to be accepted across the globe. So thank you to everyone for today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lonnie. So many gems, so many gems. I'm over here taking notes myself. So last but certainly not least, Rosalind, if you want to close it out, what is the last bit of advice that you would give to folks today?
No pressure, right?
No pressure.
Number one, when all else fails, just create dope music. Look, Twee and Bohan, I'm a fan of you guys. I'm so glad that you guys are on here. But like she said, make your ethnicity the by the way, and then we'll find you. If you're Asian, we're gonna spread that word as far as possible. But if you're an R&B artist, if you're a pop artist, whatever genre it is, just be the best in there and compete on that level. Get out of your city, go to South by Southwest, Revolt Conference, wherever it is, where you're mixed up with different people along your genre, not just on your ethnicity. But speaking on ethnicity, and number two, no matter what different heritages you have, whether you're biracial or you are 100% Vietnamese or Filipino, whatever it is, go home to that country. I really feel that it takes walking into your ancestors' heritage and walking that path to realize, what that means to be here in America and being an example and an icon like all, 9 of you guys are here today, but it really will put that extra stamp and purpose into what you do. So go home.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much to our incredible speakers today. Big ups to the MLC, to Day and to Helena for putting this whole thing on. And lastly, thank you so much to our lovely audience. We appreciated your questions, your comments in chat. I hope all of you guys learned something new today or felt inspired or took something away valuable from this conversation, because there was so much good stuff. So with that, I think we're going to sign this off and say thank you to everyone and see you next time.